Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how. Go to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. Andrew DiCecco is here from the Inside the Birds podcast. Great conversation with Mosher yesterday. We'll expand a little bit more on some of that stuff. There are some other things happening in the NFL, and I want to see if Andrew has a guess on Tom Brady's. Did you see this? Brady's going to be doing the shop, and basically they're sitting in the barbershop, and he says, I can't believe they took that MFer. You're going to stick with that MFer over me. Andrew, do you have a guess at who Brady may have been talking about when he said that?
No, I don't.
All the teams.
Could be anyone's guess.
Right? I mean, well, it's funny because there was a lot. Brady was like, for whatever reason, he didn't have a ton of suitors, I guess, last year when he was a free agent. It wasn't like teams were just lining up to come get him. And I guess he met with whatever teams he met with, and they decided, you know what, Tom, we're not going to go with you. We're going to stick with what we got. And he obviously took that as a kind of a shot. And I don't know if you saw that clip or not, but it was pretty funny that he just came out and said, you're going to stick with that MFer over signing me? I'm Tom Brady, for God's sakes.
Yeah, I mean, he's the greatest quarterback to play the game, so you gotta go with him.
So, in looking at that, I know we talked quarterbacks recently. Is Brady still for you? I mean, is it amazing? I thought this whole thing, I was thinking about this today, and I was like, all right, this guy won the Super Bowl last year. Like, is he still to you like an elite player? Or did they win that team because Tom Brady is your quarterback, or because that team was just the best team?
They won because they were just the best team. It was a collection of talent. He was good enough to carry that offense. He was a little bit more than a game manager. He still can make some throws, move the offense, but is he a bona fide premier quarterback in this league? Probably. I mean, he's still up there. As of last year, he was, but is he better than Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes? No, he's certainly not, and he's going to be very limited now. Obviously, the arm strength isn't there anymore. So, I mean, I think it was just more of the way that the roster was sort of built and assembled, and it was just more of a collection of talent.
It's a fascinating thing. I'm looking forward to seeing Brady. He's got an interesting personality outside of football when he kind of gets the opportunity to kind of sit down and do stuff like this. So that'll be something interesting to see. I want to get yesterday. Jeff was on the latest Inside the Birds podcast. They kind of looked at the 53-man roster, and they're kind of breaking down some of the stuff. And I thought, we've talked a lot about the wide receiver position, and I saw Isaac Bruce kind of coming out talking about Devonta Smith. And, when you look at that wide receiver spot there, you look at Devonta Smith coming in right off the bat, having one of these, I don't want to say like Justin Jefferson type seasons, but one of those years where he's putting up like, over 1,000 yards, that kind, or is it going to be a little bit more of a, should we expect a little bit more of a modest situation for him? Can he be that first year guy that comes right in and has like, wow, look at this guy's numbers?
I think he's going to be more of a target monster guy, probably close to, I think he'll hover right around that 1,000-yard mark. He has that continuity there with Jalen Hurts, and I think he's just such a technically proficient route runner that he's going to find the openings. He catches the ball in traffic. He has sure hands, and he's just going to be one of those options that outside, we talked about Greg Ward being a reliable option out of the slot. Well, I think Devonta Smith's going to be a reliable option all over the field. And obviously he has, like I said, that chemistry with Jalen Hurts, so I think he's going to sort of see some early production as a rookie.
I like, you use that term a lot, the target monster. I mean, he's the kind of guy that you think, does he work all over the field? Is he moving all over the place? Is he a guy that excels in water?
Well, the great thing about Devonta Smith is that he can play outside, he can play inside, he can do it all. He's a versatile player. There's been a lot of questions, a lot of skepticism about can he play on the outside at that size. Well, he's going to certainly have to add a little bit of weight to his size, but I mean, there's something to be said for his savviness and his ability, his release off the line, and just his knack for finding the soft spots in zones. Or I mean, you don't necessarily have to be 6'2", 225. I mean, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is 6'2", 225 and can't separate. But there's guys like Marvin Harrison that did it with little to no problem. I mean, it's all about the makeup of the receiver. How can you release off the line and use your hands and little subtleties like that. And that's what he is. He's a technical receiver that can do a number of things, which is why it's such a great value pick. I was surprised that he was there when the Eagles were on the clock.
Yep. I think a lot of people are going to be excited to watch him and see how they kind of incorporate him. With that, I want to get your take on how do you anticipate let's say Zach Ertz is not here. We kind of anticipate that, although we're getting, 35 days until training camp, and Zach Ertz is still on this roster. How do you think the Eagles will utilize Dallas Goedert? Similar to Ertz, where he is the main target in this offense, or is he going to take kind of a step back in the receiving game, and that they will be leaning heavier on the wide receivers than they did, with Ertz?
Well, as far as a pass catcher goes, Dallas Goedert is going to be the guy. When you look at what the Eagles have at receiver, they have a collection of young players, but they don't necessarily have a surefire top receiver, right? I mean, they have guys that can do a number of different things. Like you have your possession guy that can come up with the contested catches and Travis Fulgham. You have your speed guy in Jalen Reagor, who's not necessarily, in my opinion, going to be someone who takes on a lot of targets. I think he's going to be more of the big play, explosive player of the top three guys. And Devontae Smith's going to be more of the target monster, as I mentioned. So they have a collection of players there, but not necessarily a guy who teams are going to have to scheme to stop. You know what I mean? And I think Dallas Goedert is going to be that guy when they look to kind of slow the Eagles' aerial attack because of his size, his athleticism, what he can do. He can move him all around the offense. And you sort of saw what he could do in the first game of last year. He really broke out and showed that he can make plays from all three levels of the field, can stretch the field vertically, can make plays after the catch with Zach Ertz. That's been well documented. He's not necessarily a yak guy, but Dallas Goedert can do those things. And he's such a versatile weapon that I think that he's really going to emerge this season.
So many people, have asked me about, can he be better than Zach Ertz? I mean, that's hard to say. Zach Ertz is probably the best pass-catching tight end the Philadelphia Eagles organization ever had. But is it far-fetched to say that he could be just as, if not more, productive?
Well, I mean, if he stays healthy, right? That's the big question. Zach Ertz is more of a finesse player. He's a better route runner, I would say, than Dallas Goedert. Sure-handed. No matter what quarterback was back there, he was a security blanket for them. Dallas Goedert is more athletic. He's a better blocker. He can add another dimension to the offense that wasn't currently there with Zach Ertz. But I mean, he's been nicked up a lot, and that's ultimately going to hold him back and hold the offense back. His availability, the way that he plays the game is a lot more physical than Zach Ertz. And when you play the game in that manner, you're going to subject yourself to, you're going to suffer a lot of nicks and bruises along the way.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. 35 days, as we mentioned, getting ready for Eagles training camp. And, one thing, Miles Sanders, I want to kind of flip to him as we talked with Jeff yesterday about the running backs, and you and I talked about this the other day. But in Miles Sanders, do you see him as a guy that should be, I don't want to say an every down back, but should have more touches and should be utilized more so than obviously Doug Peterson used him? I think everybody would say yes, but what's the right balance of getting getting the most out of Miles Sanders?
I would say about 18 touches a game. I think he was criminally underutilized last season. He didn't catch the ball well, but you have guys that can do that. I mean, Miles Sanders can do that, but I wouldn't say that's his strongest area. I don't necessarily know if he can be a three-down volume type of runner, but I certainly think that he has a lot more to offer than what he was utilized last season. He's an explosive runner. He's someone that you don't necessarily want to wear down, but you have guys like Jordan Howard and Kerryon Johnson and Kenneth Gainwell, of course, who I think can be an upgraded version of Boston Scott. I think they're more so going to be in contention with one another. So there's other guys there that they have now. They don't necessarily have to shoulder. Miles isn't going to have to shoulder the burden Miles has struggled with health. So, I mean, I think that you have to pick your spots with him, but I certainly think that there's some games he was getting eight touches a game, and that's just unacceptable. So, I mean, he does have a lot more juice to provide to the offense. And I think that this season you're going to see that.
You mentioned about the pass catching. Is that a disappointment? I mean, is that something because I feel like his first year, he caught the ball out of the backfield and did a nice job there. And then last year, I felt that was a disappointment. So is it a disappointment that he's not – in other words, should they be able to utilize him more in the pass game than they did last year? Because I agree with you. I thought that was one of the more disappointing parts about his season last year, on top of the fact that I don't think they utilized him enough, is that he did have the drops problem.
Yeah, and some of those were just concentration issues. But, I mean, you're an outlet receiver there in a lot of cases, and you need to help your quarterback, especially last season when the quarterbacks were under siege. When they're lofting you up a pass and you're open and you're dropping it, I mean, that just disrupts the entire rhythm of the offense. And yes, he wasn't necessarily a primary pass catcher at Penn State, but he did prove that he could catch the football reliably as a rookie. So to see that sort of regression last year in that area of his game, where you really want to see him take the next step, and you thought that was going to be the natural progression in his game. Yeah, that was a little disappointing to see, but I think that this coaching staff is going to sort of drill that into him in training camp this summer, because he has that ability to do that and create those different mismatches. And I think that was a missing element to the offense last season. So if he's able to get back on, I think that get back on track, I think that you should feasibly see 18 to 20 touches for him a game.
I like that idea. I'd like to ask you about we look at the other running backs there. Can another running back of that group, in your opinion, find a role and complement Sanders so that they can really have that? You see some of these teams that really have that 1-2 punch. The Saints a couple of years ago, they had Kamara and Ingram. Do the Eagles have that talent on their roster?
They have more of a committee approach after him. I think Kerryon Johnson, who has been a starter in this league, who is just, I believe, 24 years old, can kind of fill that number 2 role adequately, but he has to stay healthy. He has not proven he can do that. The ability's still there. Yes, he doesn't have the burst or explosion that he had early in his career. He suffered a number of injuries along the way, but he is a good pass protector. He can pound the ball between the tackles. He is a good pass catcher. So like I said, if Miles Sanders struggles in that area again, well, you do have a guy, and you have a guy in Gainwell, you have a guy in Kerryon Johnson, should he make the roster, that are adequate in that area. So, I mean, there are options there, and I think that Kerryon Johnson's skill set right now, Mike, really best complements Miles Sanders.
Good stuff from Andrew. Man, and just talking to you right now and Jeff yesterday, and we're just been kind of focusing in on the offense the last 2 days. I am really intrigued by what this offense will look like, and I think we're all kind of like, hey, what's Nick Sirianni going to do? But we know, and I know, I think everybody out there understands that this offensive line is really what's going to be the game changer and make this thing go. And I guess if this line can stay healthy, we all think it could be a good line, but could it be a really good offense if the line is healthy? If they have that offensive line, do they have the pieces in place to be a above average offense?
Sure they do. I mean, let's not overlook the fact that they are incredibly young at the wide receiver position, but they do have a guy in Dallas Goedert who can play out wide, who can create mismatches and open things up for the wide receivers out wide. Jalen Reagor can open things up with his speed and add a vertical dimension to the offense. The offensive line, the starting unit, is very formidable, but let's not forget that the backups even, Nate Herbig, Jack Driscoll, you have Dickerson, of course, possibly Andre Dillard. These are guys that have all played snaps, and particularly the younger guys last season that I mentioned in Herbig and Driscoll. These guys they started games last season. They have that experience, so the depth is there. And then you have guys like Greg Ward, who's best suited in a more of a sort of a complementary role than being a primary receiving option. You have him there who can play inside or outside, who can be a punt returner. He's going to be utilized more limited this season, which I think is going to be beneficial to him and the offense. Quez Watkins, I think, is going to emerge as a deep threat, could be a more explosive punt return option should they go that route. Then you have all the running back stable, which we mentioned, that they all bring something different to the table. So there's going to be some competition there.
Yeah.
They have a lot of guys there that can make some things happen.
Yeah, and obviously the one guy we haven't touched on is Jalen Hurts, and he's the key to it all. Yes, the line, there's some weapons that are very intriguing, but the step forward that Hurts here really is a big one, and I guess that one really remains to be seen. We don't really know off of 4 games, I mean, what kind of feeling you could have, but I certainly think that there are intriguing enough weapons to help Hurts. It's not like, I think if he was walking into the situation he had that, say, Wentz had 2 years ago, where he's throwing to Greg Ward and Josh Perkins and that group, not such a good situation to walk into. But I feel with a veteran offensive line, having these young weapons is definitely more tenable than it would be if you were obviously playing behind last year's line, but also if you were using the weapons that you had that, quite frankly, that Wentz was kind of stuck throwing to for the last couple seasons.
I also think it helps for Jalen's perspective, knowing going into the offseason, knowing that you're the starter, knowing the guys that are already on the roster, so you can sort of get ahead of the curve, working with these guys, getting the timing down so when you get to training camp that you're not starting from square one. So that also when you get to the preseason, things start to just flow naturally, and it just becomes a natural progression leading into week 1. And I also think that Brian Johnson here is going to be the key. He's known Jalen for quite some time. I think he's going to be able to iron out some of his deficiencies and make a more balanced skill set from him, and really harp on some of the things that he didn't do well last season, like the turnovers. I thought sometimes he was too quick to bail on plays and use his legs to kind of create yards. And I think there's going to be certain things that he's going to be able to get out of Jalen that we never got to see because we always saw a 4-game sample size. And let's not forget, he was just thrown in there. There was no preseason. So I think what he was able to do was based off of his own innate athleticism. So I think now you have a young coaching staff. The tape is there on Jalen. You have Brian Johnson in there. And I think you're going to start to see a more polished and refined Jalen Hurts in year 2.
Yep. I'm looking forward to the step that he takes, knowing that he enters the year as the starter. Because, I guess, you could speak on this, Andrew, is he walked into a very difficult situation last year where he was drafted in the 2nd round, and quite frankly, people were confused and almost didn't want him as that pick there. They didn't know why they took that guy. Not the easiest situation to walk into.
Yeah, not to mention he's taken within the 2nd round, and there's no preseason. Then they kind of awkwardly try to shoehorn him into the offense on some plays here and there. It's got to be awkward in the quarterback room. You have, obviously, the whole situation there with Carson Wentz. And then when he was inserted against the Green Bay Packers, every week it was like you're waiting to hear Doug Peterson commit to either quarterback. So you also didn't know whether or not he was going to have another week, be afforded another week to showcase what he was able to do and hopefully be the quarterback in 2021. So it was just an overall just a very awkward dynamic there. But obviously now that once he figured out that he was going to be the guy and they didn't draft the quarterback, he was able to build that continuity with the rest of the offense. So I think that's going to kind of build momentum in the coming weeks.
All right, 35 days. Looking for the countdown here as we will take a look at the defensive side of the ball a little bit later on in this week with Andrew. Jeff's here tomorrow, Adam as well. And then we will start to look at the divisions. We'll start to preview all the divisions leading up to Eagles training camp July 27th. So we'll start to do with that with Andrew coming up next week when he's on here. We'll start to take a look at the 8 divisions in the NFL. Of course, 17 games this year. A lot of changes going on, but we are almost there. Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, Inside the Birds podcast here on the Sports Bash. All right, my man, take care.
Sounds good. Talk to you Friday.
Man, that goes by really quick. I could talk football. With all this basketball making us feel like miserable right now, and the Philly season just also miserable so far. I know a lot of expectations aren't there for this Eagles team, but Andrew knows his stuff. He's got great insight. The Inside the Birds guys are really good, and this offseason, this summer, we've got a lot of football that we're going to dive into. Even during the slow time of football season, we'll be breaking it down. The only place you can get NFL, 4 o'clock every day, it's Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. I'm Mike Gill.